The NASDAQ 100 last year up by close to 25%. In 2023, higher by more than 50%. The tech stocks that you follow, still room to run higher in 2025?
I think so, but look, the setup here is we're in a 2.5 years into a major bull market. It started in the middle of 2022 after we'd had this shock of this dramatic ramp in interest rates. And since then, tech stocks have done really nothing but go up. At some point, that'll fade, and I think it'll start fading this year. I don't think you'll have the outperformance going into this year as you had the last 2 years. Maybe that's an easy statement to make. I look at the fundamentals of the group I look at, the internet names, and I look at online retail, online travel, cloud computing, advertising, and I think the growth rates there are relatively sustainable. All of the checks we had at the end of last year going into the beginning of this year have been relatively constructive. We also had record high margins, and I think those margins are largely sustainable because I think the sector as a whole is just being more judicious about headcount adds than they were in the past. And then I do think the third factor here is this AI, Gen AI. I think it's a gift that is going to keep on giving for quite some time. It just leads to more efficient processes, better revenue streams, et cetera. So there's a couple of reasons to stay fundamentally constructive. There's very little dislocation. There's very few of the major tech stocks that I look at really look dislocated. The one that I really like here that I think is Uber.
Well, talk to us about that, because Uber, it's so dominant compared to Lyft, but the fact that it hasn't exactly kept up with some of the other internet large cap names that you cover that have seen the really dramatic multiple expansion. What is the bull case for Uber going forward? Can it catch up?
Well, let me start with the bear cases. You did have a slowdown in mobility bookings. That's their rideshare business in the back half of last year, of 24. And then there's really the concern over robo-taxis and whether they'll obviate the need to ever have ride-sharing networks in the future. I mean, it's possible that happens. I'm taking the other side on that, but those are the two factors that have caused the stock to correct from mid 80s down to $60. A pretty material correction. The stocks I look at, it's the only one that's really materially corrected. But I think that creates the opportunity because I think as the largest demand aggregator out there, I think that robo-taxis will find a place on Uber's network. We got two cities, Austin and Atlanta, where we're going to see Waymo robo-taxis on Uber's network. And my guess is that, I'm a big fan of robo-taxis here and of Waymo here in San Francisco.
Right.
And I think you're going to see more competition in that space in the future. And I think you'll see more of those cars on Uber's network. And evidence that they will be on Uber's network is the catalyst on the shares.
Well, I've never been in a Waymo, but I'll be in San Fran in about 2 weeks.
You should do it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I have a real fear of my own mortality, so we'll put a pin in that. But in any case, Mark, I'm taking a look at your notes. You mentioned, of course, those dislocated high-quality stocks. Uber is among them. So is Airbnb. So is Alphabet. And that caught my attention because Alphabet is in a bit of a different league than the Airbnbs and the Ubers of this market.
Well, Google, I would say that Google at 160 was dislocated. At 190, I'm not sure it is. But we've got some events coming up. There's two in particular. Now, this is all getting out of fundamentals. This is all regulatory. First is the DOJ's antitrust case against Google. Like, Google lost this in terms of its search business. We're not going to get really great visibility into this until August, unless there's some sort of settlement. And I think the chances of a settlement went up when we had the U.S. electoral results. So, that's a very hard thing to handicap, but that's one factor out there. And then the other one is the TikTok ban. And, we're days away from this ban going into effect. Now, it's possible it gets stayed. There is a provision in the law for that. It's possible it gets stayed. And it's possible that there's some sort of forced sale or a sale of TikTok. But if there is a TikTok ban, and I think the market is really heavily discounting this by more than it probably should, if there is a banning of TikTok, I think the beneficiaries of this are going to be Google, YouTube Shorts, and Reels at Meta.
Who's the bigger beneficiary if the ban goes into effect? And Meta platforms because of what's going on with Instagram and Reels?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just, users, if I can't really use TikTok, there's a wonderful value proposition to TikTok, and so people will look for other short form video places. Reels is kind of at the top of the list, but so is YouTube Shorts. So just Meta by a hair over Google, but they both are beneficiaries. And then advertisers have got these ad formats nailed. They've got them locked in. They can't put them on TikTok. They're going to have to find other places, and the two obvious places are Google and Meta.
What's the percentage chance, Mark, that you think this ban actually goes through with TikTok?
I don't know. I guess it's still a minority chance. So, I don't think it's a probability. It's less than 50% chance. Maybe it's 20, 25%. I'm just struck by talking with investors. There's a belief that there's single-digit percent chance that it goes through. But it is the law of the land, and this is not a First Amendment issue. I know there's First Amendment aspects to it. It's really national security, and this was a pretty broad bipartisan congressional law that went into effect. I mean, that was pretty well voted on by both Democrats and Republicans. And so, this is the law of the land that's going to go into effect. But who knows what happens in the next couple of weeks. So I'm a little baffled by this. But anyway, that's the law of the land. And if it does go into effect, there's a clear positive catalyst for both Google and Meta.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how that actually shakes out. But Mark, before we let you go, when it comes to TikTok and potential beneficiaries of a ban, we were actually talking about this in one of our morning meetings, that you take a look at the content on Reels, for example. A lot of it is recycled content from TikTok. So how urgent of a question is it for Meta to actually attract the creators onto their own platform?
Oh, it's critical for them to do that. I mean, whether or not there's a TikTok ban, I just think if there's a TikTok ban, those creators are going to be forced to, take their audiences and build them somewhere else. And I'd be surprised if a lot of TikTok creators, I think are somewhat diversified anyway. I know there's some that aren't, but I think there's a good number that are. So anyway, this has always been the drive of Meta, is to attract more short-form video content and talent over to its network. I think they'll be able to do that. They've been pretty successful at doing it in a lot of different areas.